Salve discipuli, this is Magister Betty, and we're going to go over the Stage 21 new material, which is the perfect passive participle. Quickly though, let's review what participles are in general. A participle is a verbal adjective, meaning it's a verb that has been converted into an adjective. You translate it with an ing, and some examples of present active participles are the running man, I saw the man cooking, I saw the girl doing, the girl doing math is my sister. These are present active participles. We didn't call them present active participles before, we just called them participles, but now we're going to learn another form of a participle. So it is very important that we be able to differentiate between the two. So the ones we were doing before were present active participles. Quick review. Copy down these two sentences. Underline the participle and mark its case, number, and gender. Make sure you put brackets around the prepositional phrases. Label all subjects, verbs, and direct objects. Draw an arrow from the participle to its antecedent, and then translate the sentence. So go ahead and pause the video and do that for these two sentences. All right, so our first sentence here, servi per villam contenderunt areneas quaerentes. Servi is our subject. Per villam I have in brackets because it's a prep phrase. Contenderunt is our verb. Areneas is accusative, therefore it's our direct object. Quaerentes can be four different things, but here we know that it is nominative, plural, and masculine because servi is the only one in the sentence that matches it. So servi is nominative, plural, masculine, therefore quaerentes is nominative, plural, masculine. There's nothing else in the sentence that matches it and makes sense. Areneas is accusative, plural, feminine. This in form could be accusative, plural, feminine, but it wouldn't make any sense. So as is, this sentence will read, the slaves hurried through the town searching for spider webs. Who was doing the searching? The slaves. The spider webs weren't doing the searching, so it doesn't make any sense for this to match that. All right, so puella matrem in horto sedentem vidit. Okay, in horto is in parentheses because it's a prep phrase. Sedentem is our participle. This nt right here lets us know that it's a present participle, like this nt up here. And the em is a third declension adjective ending. So puella is our subject, matrem is accusative, so it's the direct object. Vidit is our verb. This is accusative, singular. It could be in form, it could be feminine or masculine, but the only other accusative singular in the sentence is matrem, which is feminine. That's how we know that this is feminine and therefore modifying it. So the girl saw the mother sitting in the garden. Who's doing the sitting? The mother is sitting in the garden. Okay, so the girl saw the mother sitting in the garden. All right, so now how do we make perfect passive participles? This one is easier in some ways. There's actually nothing that you have to do other than know the fourth principal part. So the fourth principal part is your perfect passive participle. So moving forward, it's very important to memorize all four principal parts whenever we learn new words. It uses a 1-2 adjective endings, not third adjective endings. It must match its antecedent, case number, and gender, just like adjectives, just like the present active participles. So here's an example. We have porto, portare, portavi, portatus. This right here is our fourth principal part. This is the perfect passive participle. So if you just take this us off, then you have your base or your root, to which you can add all of your 1-2 adjective endings. So here it is in every single possible form to match any form of a noun that it could possibly need to modify. We've got our masculine endings, our feminine endings, our neuter endings, singulars on top, plurals on the bottom, our typical chart. All right, so let's talk a little bit about active versus passive because we've never really talked about passive before. This is the first time we're going to see it. So in the previous examples, the participles were active, which means the antecedent was doing the action described by the participle. For example, the mother sitting in the garden that we saw previously. The mother was the antecedent and the mother was doing the sitting. She was doing the participle. However, with the passive ones, the participles they're going to be passive, which means that the antecedent is receiving the action described by the participle. You're going to translate perfect passive participles as having been verbed. So there's still an ing in here, but the ing is not on the verb itself. This having been needs to be in there for pretty much every single one of them. There's a few that it just doesn't work because the English sounds kind of clunky. But having been loved, or having been cooked, or having been read. That's how you're going to translate perfect passive participles. All right, so let's do a couple examples, just like before. So these are the exact same directions. Underline the participle, mark its case, number, gender, put brackets around prep phrases, so on and so forth. So go ahead and pause the video, copy down these 2 sentences and do these instructions, and then we can look at the answers. All right, so sentence number 1, I put parentheses around a liberto because it is a prep phrase. Excitatus is our participle. It's a perfect passive participle. It is the 4th principal part of excito, excitara, and this is a 1-2 adjective ending. This is a second declension ending here. All right, so we've got memor as the subject. This participle here is nominative, singular, and masculine. Iratissimus is an adjective. It's modifying the subject, so I'm going to mark it as a subject complement. And we have a linking verb here. And the excitatus is modifying memor. Both of these are nominative, singular, masculine. This sentence is going to read memor, having been woken by the slave, was very angry. So this right here, having been woken, is the participle. And then by the slave tells us who's doing it. So notice that memor, even though he's the subject of the sentence and he's the antecedent of the participle, he is not doing the action. The action is being performed on memor. Memor is receiving the action. That's why it's passive. So let's look at the other example. I have a romanis in parentheses because that's a prep phrase. Edificati is the participle, so I underlined it. This is from the verb edifico, edificare, edificavi, edificatus. So this is the 4th principal part, and it has a 1-2 adjective ending. All right, so thermi, this is nominative, feminine, plural, first declension, so that's our subject. This is modifying that, nominative, plural, feminine. We have another linking verb with a subject complement. All right, so this participle here, perfect passive participle, is going with the thermi, the baths. All right, so the baths built by the Romans were very big. Notice that I didn't do the having been built. An easier way, a smoother way to translate it is just to say built. Up here I could have said woken by the slave, but this is a smoother way of doing it. But for now, what I would like you guys to do until you get really used to this is to do the having been woken version, or the having been verbed version. All right, so remember that participles are verbs acting as adjectives. They describe a noun. They match their antecedent in case, number, and gender. For the perfect passive participles, for the time being, translate them as having been verbed. Perfect passive participles will come from the 4th principal part, so make sure you know your principal parts, and they use 1-2 declension endings. Vale te discipuli.